Happy Friday, Munchkins! It was so nice to have a Google Meet with you guys today, and I posted some info about our schedule for when we will have our daily Google Meets starting next week. So I am going to read some more of our book today. We're on Chapter 5, Magic, Mischief, Nonsense. While the kettle boiled, Tilly seized the chance to run upstairs to her room and dig out her mom's copy of Alice in Wonderland, tucking Mary's photo inside the cover. Granddad wasn't at the till when she returned with the tea. She tracked him down in the corner of the shop that they rather grandly called the office, although it was really just a desk tucked into a corner of the fourth floor where customers didn't venture as regularly. As she headed toward the office, a sweet, smoky smell lingered in the air, one that got stronger as she got closer to the desk, alongside a murmur of voices. Someone very posh was responding languidly to Granddad's questions, and as Tilly rounded the corner, she saw a tall, elegant man in an expensive-looking gray coat sitting opposite Granddad. To Tilly's surprise, he was smoking a black pipe, which was the cause of the sweet scent in the air, and he was wearing an odd hat with a flap on each side, even though it was always cozy inside the shop. "I don't mean to be rude, but I don't think you should be smoking in here," she said, putting down Granddad's cup. The man and Granddad stopped talking abruptly and stared at her, before turning to look at each other. There's a picture of him right there. "Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt your meeting, Granddad," Tilly said, instantly worried she'd been too terse with someone who looked decidedly important. I just wanted to ask you something, but I'll come back later." Granddad nodded mutely, and Tilly went back downstairs, but only a few moments later she heard her name being called. "Tilly!" Granddad's voice came down the stairs. "Wait for me a sec, will you?" Tilly paused so Granddad could catch up with her. "Sorry about that, love," he said back to his usual self. "I was just deep in conversation and entirely forgot I'd asked for that cup of tea. Sorry if I was strange with you. You know how I get. Can't concentrate on more than one thing at a time." "It's okay," Tilly said. "Who was that anyway, and why were you letting him smoke?" Granddad looked sheepish. He's an old friend, and he likes doing things his way, so I let the rules slide for him and turn a blind eye. I know it's ill-advised." "I can't seem to turn a corner in this place without interrupting someone else's conversation," Tilly said. "What on earth do you mean, sweetheart?" Granddad said. "I barged in on Grandma catching up with a friend yesterday, too," Tilly said, "and that lady vanished as soon as I interrupted. It just seemed to make everything awkward." "Which lady was that?" Granddad asked slowly. "I think she was called Lizzie," Tilly said. "Grandma said she reminded her of Mom." Granddad took a deep breath and then smiled warmly at Tilly. "Enough reminiscing. What were you coming to ask me about?" Tilly showed him the book she still had tucked under her arm. "Ah, Alice in Wonderland. Perfect research for the party. Can you believe we've never had an Alice theme before in all our years of autumn parties?" "It's one of Mom's," Tilly explained, passing it to Granddad, who opened the cover automatically and saw the photo that Tilly had shown him yesterday. He stilled for a fraction of a moment before placing his palm on the photo, like it was on the cheek of a child. "It's a lovely connection to have, isn't it?" Granddad said, holding the photo up to his glasses. "Having the same book she's reading in the photo. She loved Alice in Wonderland too," he said, closing the book and pointing at the cover. "Do you know why she liked them so much?" Tilly said, remembering her decision to try to find out more about her mother's taste in books. "Well, as I said before, she always felt a very personal connection to a little princess," Granddad said carefully. "And why do any of us love Alice's adventures in Wonderland? Magic, mischief, nonsense, all the good stuff." "I wish I could talk to her about it," Tilly said. "Me too, sweetheart," Granddad said. "Me too." He looked into her eyes quite seriously for a moment before an extravagant stomach rumble invaded the silence. "Well then, I suppose I'd best check on lunch. It'll be ready soon. Pop down before too long." He gave her a kiss on the top of her head and set off toward the kitchen. Tilly found the nearest chair, sat down, and began reading the familiar first few sentences. Soon she was as lost in Wonderland as Alice, reassured by the scenes and characters she knew so well, and soothed by knowing that her mother had made the same journey years before. And since it's Friday, I'll read 2 chapters today. Chapter 6. Trouble always starts when you are out of proportion with whom you are talking to. After creamy leek and potato soup with chunks of homemade bread and salty butter, Tilly to find Jack, ready to beg or steal something sweet. But before she made it to Jack's cafe at the back of the ground floor, she was struck on the forehead by a jelly bean. Turning in the direction it had come from, she saw a girl in a full-skirted blue dress sitting on the stairs, lazily throwing jelly beans toward the nearest bookcase. How funny, it's the second book in a row we've read that talks about somebody throwing jelly beans. Did I hit you? I'm sorry, I was aiming for the cat. Does it have a name? Do you think it likes sweets? Tilly stared at her and the girl widened her eyes in impatience. The cat, what's it called? My cat is called Dinah. She's called The girl looked directly at her and Tilly felt that little itch in her brain. Alice? She's called Alice. You don't seem very sure about it, the girl said, peering at Tilly. But never mind that, because my name is Alice, too. How curious. Alice, Tilly repeated. Yes, Al-is, she said again slowly. And what is your name? Matilda, Tilly interrupted. Whatever your name is, there is always time for good manners. It's very rude to interrupt. I'm sorry, Tilly said. It's nice to meet you, Alice. Would you like a cup of tea, maybe? Picture there. Nice to meet you, Matilda, Alice replied, and bobbed a neat curtsy. Tilly tried to copy, but just ended up doing a small awkward bow. And thank you, but no thank you. I don't tend to eat or drink in new places until I've thoroughly got my bearings. Alice looked Tilly up and down. We both seem to be around the same size, though, which is a good sign. Trouble always starts when you're out of proportion with whom you're talking to. Are you looking for a book? Tilly asked. Not especially, although I'm never averse to finding a book along my way. They can come in handy sometimes, except you never know what's inside until it's too late, in my experience. She sighed extravagantly. Do you know, someone once told me that explanations take such a dreadfully long time that one should focus on adventures, and I'd rather come around to their way of thinking. So if you'll excuse me. And with that, Alice skipped toward the back of the bookshop, passing a round little man with a very neat mustache who was coming the other way. The little man gave no indication of having seen her, but gave a neat bow in Tilly's direction. Excusez-moi, mademoiselle. Tilly's head spun, but as she turned round to watch the man leaving, she found herself face to face with the red-headed girl from that morning. They stared at each other. You, the girl said, sounding surprised. You, Tilly said, you're back. You seem so familiar to me from somewhere. What school do you go to? The girl tilted her head to one side and stared hard at Tilly. I go to school in Avonlea, she said, near my home at Green Gables. And your name is Anne, Tilly said slowly. With an E, Anne reminded her. Anne with an E from Green Gables. Anne of Green Gables? The girl nodded, still openly staring at Tilly. But who are you? I'm Tilly, with a Y, from here. But you remember me, and now I am here. I remember you, Anne said in wonder. As I said, we literally met this morning, Tilly repeated, but how can you be Anne of Green Gables? She's not a real person. Well, I'm absolutely really here, she said, reaching out and touching Tilly gently on the arm. Is this a joke? Tilly said, looking behind her as if she would see hidden cameras somewhere, or wondering if it was part of some elaborate setup by Granddad to entertain her during the holidays. You're from a story. Why, yes, Anne replied happily, not seeming at all perturbed by this fact, and settling herself on the stairs. You're real, but you're not real. You're from a book, but you're here, Tilly said, feeling like her brain wasn't quite keeping up with what was happening in front of her. Well, why on earth does being from a book mean I'm not real? Asked Anne. I'm as real as you or this shop, or Julius Caesar, or the Lady of Shalott. You can touch my hair if you'd like, and you will see it is ever so real, to my eternal frustration. Tilly had to admit that Anne's physical presence was undeniable. Right, Tilly said, sitting down next to Anne, determined to try to wrap some logic around what seemed to be happening. Well, what were you doing in Green Gables before you came here? How did you get out? I was sitting in the orchard, imagining all the places I might visit when I'm older. And then I was here. But how? Tilly was almost bursting with frustration. I don't know, I just was. I think it's rather marvelous. If you like, I can invent a thrilling story about how I got here with magic spells and a glittering portal. Maybe some kind of benevolent but cursed princess living in a tower who writes poetry and is only allowed a single glass of water each day. Tilly interrupted her before she got even more carried away. But how will you get back? Won't there be gaps in your book spoiling your story somehow? You being here? I'll just go back after I'm here. And I don't think it can spoil my story. I rather think only I can spoil my own story. Tilly sighed and put her head on her knees, and then thought of something. Did you see the other girl who was here? She asked Alice. But when she raised her head, Anne was no longer there. That's it for this week, friends. I will be back on Monday with Chapter 7. Everyone have a good weekend. It's supposed to be really nice weather tomorrow, so make sure you get some time outside in the sunshine. Sunshine's good for us. And I will see you guys on Monday. Bye.